Hello everyone. Again, let's get started with the highlights today and we'll just jump straight into it. So switching the screen now, and yeah, the first one is from The Boy, the Mole, the Fox and the Horse. When I was making the book, I often wondered who on earth who am I to be doing this? But as the horse says, the truth is everyone is winging it. This is in one of the early sections of the book. It's a very short book. If you've not read this, it's probably like half an hour read, but it's very impactful. It's beautiful. I think there's no other word to describe it. It's the interactions between this how do I put it, this kind of like poetic interaction between all of these characters, the boy, the mole, the fox and the horse. It's very insightful. And in the early sections of the early pages of the book, the author says, who am I to be writing this book? But as the horse says, everyone is winging it. And so am I. I'm doing these videos, I'm just winging it. Every day is different, slightly different, but every day is same. And every day, everybody's winging it. So yeah, I think it's a very nice thought to start today's video with, that everyone is winging it and we do our bests. We put out something in the world and it works, it doesn't work, it's all an experiment. And yeah, it's life. Well, we'll move on. Originals. Risk takers are drawn to being first and they are prone to making impulsive decisions. Meanwhile, more risk averse entrepreneurs watch from the sidelines, waiting for the right opportunity and balancing the risk portfolios before entering. I think it's pretty straightforward. It's clear. The subtext in this highlight is that there are different kind of entrepreneurs. It doesn't mean that if you're an entrepreneur, you're always going to take risks. There are risk averse entrepreneurs. In fact, in another section of the book and in other books as well, entrepreneurs are said to be just as risk averse as non-entrepreneurs. So it's being first. This book is about being first, right? As the name says, originals, the people who were first in doing something. And that's not the end of it. It's not, yeah, there is a first mover advantage, but it is overrated. And there are risk averse entrepreneurs who look for the right opportunity, they balance their risk portfolios before entering, and they succeed as well. So being first is not the end of it all. That's the point of the book, and I think this highlight as well. We'll move on. Remote, not distant. A silent brainstorm allows participants to come up with new ideas in silence at their own pace and without external influence. It helps overcome groupthink and peer pressure. Many studies show that silent brainstorming generates better creative ideas. So this is a practice that I think I should encourage more in my organization as well. We In my organization, we are mostly we work we are remote since day one. Since about 10 years now, and all of our work is asynchronous. So a silent brainstorm, that's of course it's more equitable. There is this thing that more people can participate in it, and it helps you overcome groupthink. So if you're in the room, you're bound by these certain pressures that okay, that you might feel that okay, I have to come up with these. That you might feel that you may have to mirror somebody else, or you may have to come up with certain responses in a certain way because everybody else present in the room. But a silent brainstorm, a remote brainstorm does not suffer from these things. It's a very different. It's something we are not used to. It's different. Yeah, that's there, and people associate that with a problem, but actually it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to overcome these problems of groupthink and peer pressure. And if you can make the silent brainstorm work, yes, that's even more powerful than the regular brainstorming practices that we have. So, like the highlight says, many studies show that silent brainstorming generates better creative ideas. So, the book, I don't think in this section it covers this different, it mentions these different studies. But of course, I've read about this remote practices in different studies in different other books, and I can I can assist to this. But of course, it's something that I myself have to try more of. Let's go on. 4,000 weeks. In his book Sabbath as Resistance, the Christian theologian Walter Brueggemann, I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly, describes the Sabbath as an invitation to spend 1 day per week in the awareness and practice of the claim that we are situated on the receiving end of the gifts of the God. One need not be a religious believer to feel some of the deep relief in the idea of being on the receiving end, in the possibility that today, at least, at least, there might be nothing more you need to do in order to justify your existence. This was very, very, it was a kind of an eye opener for me. Um, we have this tendency that we may not think of it consciously, but there is this tendency that, okay, what have I done today? Has today been productive for me? And kind of like the highlight says, am I justifying my existence today? And this highlight, the book, in fact, like I said, this book was very, very impactful for me. The book in itself and this highlight specifically, it shows this that, okay, there is a day in the week, it's marked that you don't need to do anything. That today, at least, there might be nothing more you need to do in order to justify your existence. And that tells me that, how do I put this? I'm just kind of trying to, frame this in a different way. But it tells me that, that it's okay that I cannot get to everything, and that's fine. I cannot complete my to-do list for the day or my to-do list for the week. It's still open, and there is always more to do. But I'm not worried about it today. Today, I'm just going to relax. And that's an idea seems so foreign to me that I'm having difficulty even describing it. And yeah, that's why I think this, I need to be reminded of this highlight again and again, that it's okay to just let go once in a while. Well, let's move on. Factfulness. If someone offers you a single example and wants to draw conclusions about a group, ask for more examples, or flip it over. That is, ask whether an opposite example would make you draw the opposite conclusion. If you are happy to conclude that all chemicals are unsafe on the basis of one unsafe chemical, would you be prepared to conclude that all chemicals are safe on the basis of one safe chemical? So this book covers a lot of different aspects of factfulness, but it also contains highlights like these, sections like these where it helps us determine, where it helps us see things in new light, with facts in mind. So, like the highlight says, I think it's pretty straightforward that, okay, if somebody gives you an example that say that, okay, oh, look, see, there are, see, this chemical is so dangerous. All chemicals are dangerous. That generalization. So how do you deal with that? And so the highlight gives you an example that, okay, flip it over. Ask for an opposite example. So look, this chemical is safe. So all chemicals are safe. Would you agree with that? And that's one way to deal with this, with the scenario that keeps playing over and over, the scenario of generalization, just because, okay, there is one example you found that, and people tend to generalize that to a whole group. One easy way to beat that is, give a counter example and say that, okay, like the highlight says, there is a safe chemical. So would you conclude all chemicals are safe? Well, yeah, let's move on. As a man thinketh, people do not attract what they want, but what they are. Right. Yeah. I think it's kind of like the manifestation of our own thoughts and desires. It kind of goes into our actions. So, what we think, who we think we are, our identity, our behaviors, our actions, they all of this collectively makes up our identity. And that is what we attract, not what we want, not what, like, okay, it's not like, okay, you repeat to yourself that, okay, I want certain thing, I want this, and that happens, but what they are. And this means a lot of things. It means that it's not as easy as just wanting something. You have to work at it, because the highlight says, the quote says what they are. And how do you become something? You become something through work, through practice, through your actions. And once you reach there, you attract more of it. So this idea that people have that, okay, in terms of manifestation of thoughts, that okay, just because you want something, it becomes true. No, it's not as simple as that. Yeah, it's fancy to say that, you could look at it that way, but it's not as simple as that. It's not just the question of, okay, me wanting something. There is work involved. And of course, then this makes it very realistic, very down to earth feeling that you do get what you work for. And your mindset and your thoughts and your openness to the world and your openness to receiving it in the first place and your openness to yourself, it's a collective sum of all of these things. So yeah, people do not attract what they want, but what they are. Well, let's move on. 4,000 weeks again. There is a sort of cruelty, Ido Landau points out. Again, I hope I'm pronouncing the name right. In holding yourself to standards nobody could ever reach, and which many of us would never dream of demanding of other people. The more human approach is to drop such efforts as completely as you can. Let your impossible standards crash to the ground. Then pick a few meaningful tasks from the rubble and get started on them today. Right. Again, I think this highlight kind of covers it. I this is it's so difficult for me to imagine situations like these, scenarios like this, and it's precisely why I should be reminded of these things again and again. That it's very difficult for me to describe what this means to me. So we all have impossible standards, like the highlight points out that we would not have such standards of others. We would hold them only for ourselves. And the more humane approach is to drop such efforts completely, just let them shatter to the ground and then pick up things that make sense, as in let go of all your notions of what self-worth is and start fresh. I think that's what it's telling me. Pick a few meaningful tasks from the rubble and get started on them today. Forget the standards that you think that you need to have of yourself or of others. Think it eventually points to self-kindness. Moving on. Man's search for meaning. So it's a bonus supplemental highlight. Let's read it anyway. When a man finds that it is his destiny to suffer, he will have to accept his suffering as his task, his single and unique task. He will have to acknowledge the fact that even in suffering, he is unique and alone in the universe. No one can relieve him of his suffering or suffer in his place. His unique opportunity lies in the way in which he bears his burden. So, this book is quite popular. I think it's in two different parts. In first part, or in one of the parts, I'm forgetting which part comes first. In one of the parts, he describes the theory of logotherapy, and the second one, it's the second part, or the other part, it's his story in the concentration camp, the author's story, Viktor Frankl. So, of course, I mean, as you can imagine, concentration camp and the suffering, and it's, well, I don't know, it's difficult to imagine that, but the story, it's it's difficult to kind of convey the impact of that story. It's not, if I remember correctly in the book, it's not kind of like a linear story. It's he kind of only covers those parts which are relevant to the studies that he's presenting. Like the book is about his theory of logotherapy as well, right? So it's kind of like he's jumping from one incident to another, but it's still heartbreaking, right? And of course, the central theme of the book is suffering. His story, his experience in the concentration camp, the suffering that he faced, and his reflections on it. So the author says he'll have to acknowledge the fact that even in suffering, he's unique and alone in the universe, right? And no one can relieve him of his suffering or suffer in his place. Well, I'll just leave this highlight with you. It's I don't know if I can do any justice to convey this. By all means, read this book. It's very impactful. both parts of it, the story and the understanding of logotherapy. Range. I always advise my people to read outside your field every day something. And most people say, well, I don't have time to read outside my field. I say, no, you do have time. It's far more important. Your world becomes a bigger world, and maybe there's a moment in which you make connections. Right. It's it's funny, how people say, I don't have time to read outside my field. It kind of reminds me of this other thought that some writer, I'm forgetting who's the name of the writer, and when people ask him for advice, on how to write their books, he says read a lot. And when they say that, I don't have time for reading a lot, and then he responds that if you don't have time to read, you don't have time to write. So anyway, like that was a digression, I know. The point of the book is the point of this book, Range, is that you're reading widely something outside your world, and that makes your world a bigger world, and maybe there's a moment in which you make connections, which is what encourages creativity. Again, I think it's pretty straightforward, so I'll just leave this be here. Working backwards, the method that Amazon interviews use for drilling down goes by the acronym STAR: situation, task, action, result. What was the situation? What were you tasked with? What actions did you take? What was the result? Okay, I think that's pretty straightforward, and you can search for the STAR method and look for a lot of different examples of questions and responses for this. But yeah, there's not much to reflect. It's just pointing down, like this highlight is just pointing out that, okay, the Amazon interviewers use STAR, and many other employers do as well. Many other companies use this method of drilling down, and they expect answers to be of this format: what was the situation, what were you tasked with, what actions did you take, and what was the result. So yeah, I think that's the end of it. This is a book I've not read, so I think I'm just going to skip it. Yeah, not today. And that brings me to the end of today's video. Thank you for watching so far, and have a good day.